Hello, everyone. Are you having trouble making a decision about which RV or maybe which type of RV to buy?
Yeah, today we're going to be talking all about what we learned in buying the 3 different RVs that we have had in our life. So stay tuned. The RV life. We're surrounded with the message that it's a life you have to wait until retirement to have, and a life that only some can afford. And while it might be reality for those who want to believe that's true, we're on a mission to change that mindset and help people to stop wondering and start wandering to create a life they love.
Join us in conversations about how to design your RV life. We're Bryan Luann Street, and this is the RV Living Show.
Hello and welcome back. This is the RV Living Show with Bryan and Luann Street.
Yes.
So what are we talking about today?
Well, we're talking about some RV buying tips.
All right. So I guess, when we first came on, we wanted to tell you that we're going to be sharing 3 tips that will help you in your RV buying process. Whether you're buying an RV for the very first time or whether it's your second or third RV, we have learned a lot in our experience. And so we wanted to share what we've learned in the last 8 years of owning an RV. So the first tip that we're going to talk about, well, first, a couple housekeeping things. As people are joining us live, we're going to be talking to you at the end. If you have any questions about buying your RV or anything that we've discussed today, we would love it if you would say hi in the comments and we can chat with you at the end of this episode, because this is what the RV Living Show is all about. It's to interact and share and learn some more things about your RV life.
That's right. And if you're looking for an RV, tell us which type you're looking for.
Yeah, we would be really interested to know that. So what we learned about buying an RV, there are a lot of things, aren't they?
There's a lot of things to RV ownership.
There are. And so what we have learned in the last 8 years, we're going to share 3 of the main things with you today. The first one is to know what is your primary purpose or reason of use for your RV.
Yeah, this is very important. To start with, we think of RVs. Yes, RVs can be used for practically anything you want to use them for. Any type could be used for anything. But what we're referring to here is that if you're thinking of traveling, and you just want to be very quick and travel around the country, maybe go from campground to campground, picking the right RV is going to make a big difference here, because if you maybe pick a very large RV, that could tend to slow you down. It can create a lot of problems, and we've experienced that. So picking an RV designed for the purpose of how you want to use it is very important.
Yeah, if you're just weekend camping or a vacationer, the RV that you're going to use to just sit at a destination and go back home is going to be totally different than the RV that you may choose to live full-time in. So knowing your primary purpose to start out is going to make a huge difference in narrowing down your choice. But here's the caveat. Maybe you think you want a vacation and do weekend camping now, but in the back of your head, you're like, maybe I want to full-time. Maybe it's something that you've thought about a lot, right? And so that's the RV that it's a little tougher to buy when you don't have that clear direction. But we hope that some of the things that we are going to share with you today isn't going to help you necessarily pick the individual RV, but give you the things to look for when you are shopping.
Right, some guidelines to go by for sure.
So finding the RV that fits your primary purpose, you're going to look at that purpose, and then you're going to talk about the floor plan. This is what people always get wrapped up in, right? So and we want to tell you that it's not only about the floor plan.
No, it's not. It's not about the floor plan. There's so many important things. A floor plan, yes, a floor plan is important, and you need to think about that when you're buying. But if you pick out an RV strictly by the floor plan, you could end up with something you're not enjoying down the road.
Yeah, so beyond the floor plan, we want to challenge you to look at 3 things. Quality, service, and experience. So why don't you talk about quality?
Well, you know, quality is probably the number one thing I like to think about when we're buying an RV, because when you go into different RVs, for instance, you go to a show and you go in some different RVs, you're going to see they maybe have a different feel. There's fit and finishes that are different. Manufacturers, certain ones tend to or be a little bit, I'm going to call them a little bit better, maybe higher quality for sure. Picking an RV that is well built, because you know you're driving these things down the road, you know things are vibrating, things are beating up and down, and they're like rolling earthquakes. Picking one that's well built, it could eliminate some of the problems as you go down the road for sure.
Yeah, so we have a little bit of a story about this. So we wanted a different RV than the one that we currently had. This was years ago. We were only weekend camping and vacationing, but we wanted a little bit of a different setup. And so we went to an RV show. And when we walked in the RV show, I was all about the floor plan. I wanted these certain things, which is great. Believe me, you want to narrow those things down before you go shopping. But the concentrating on just the floor plan could lead to some things, and that's why I wanted to share this story with you. So I went in and I picked this one floor plan. It was this one type of RV, this one manufacturer, and I'm like, okay, that's it. This is the one I want. This is our goal. We need to figure out how we're going to get this in another year or two, because that's kind of the path we were on. So we meandered through the RV show and we ended up in a different section, and a different dealer had his RVs there, and we happened to walk in a different RV. And this RV literally was only $20,000 more. And I know that you're like, oh, that's a lot of money. But when you're paying for an RV, whether it's a motorhome or a fifth wheel or even a travel trailer that's big enough for what you want to do and fits the purpose of what you want to do with it, then I looked at this, and the way that I felt when I walked in it was completely different. It was that tangible when I walked in as to the one that I had before. You could immediately feel how the finishes were better. You could immediately feel that the cabinets were better. Like it was a profound difference. So we really encourage you to look at the quality based on your purpose. Now, you may not want to spend a whole lot of money if you're going to buy a travel trailer and leave it at the lake, right?
That's right.
But this is just some things that you want to look at. Don't let it just be about the floor plan.
Right. You know, look at the cabinets, look at how things are built in an RV, and realize that you know you're using this if you're full time, obviously every day. But if you're traveling with it for an extended period of time or even weekend camping, is that thing going to hold up to normal wear and tear? I mean, think about that when you're going in that RV.
I mean, if you're taking kids with you, you know, some of the fit and finishes that we've seen are so flimsy that, you know, you're constantly yelling at your child or grandchild, don't do that, you're going to break it. Don't do that, you're going to break it. Now, again, RVs are not made the same way as homes, but
no, they're not.
But still, it does have that effect.
Right.
So the next thing we're going to talk about is service.
Yeah, here's a key thing to any RV is that no matter what RV you buy, if you can't get good service, it's not worth it. Bottom line, because if you can't get it in and get it repaired correctly, then you can't use that RV.
That's true.
That's bottom line.
That is the bottom line. So when you do want to buy one, you want to have that service part thought about before you purchase. Is the dealer you're purchasing from going to be able to service you adequately?
Yeah, you know, you could buy RVs. So many dealers out there today that may be some smaller dealerships or just strictly sell RVs, and maybe they could give you a good price, and that would be okay. But the problem is they can't really give you the service when it comes time to get that thing repaired. So you got to think about that. Where were you going to take your RV? Who's going to stand behind it? And most of the time, I find if you buy from a certain, like a nice dealership that has a good service department, when you go back there, they take care of you.
Yeah, and the other thing is to look at how far back they're backlogged. Do they have good service techs, that kind of thing? If you can't get in and get it repaired so you can get back to having fun, you know, your whole RV experience is kind of shortcut or shortchanged, I should say. So that's our next tip, is the experience. All of these tips lead back to the whole RVing experience and what you want to experience with your RV lifestyle. And it's travel, or it's a home away from home, or it's, you know, so many different things. And you don't want to have the fact that you pick the wrong thing for the wrong purpose, end up with the RV that doesn't give you the satisfaction that you want, and then end up not having a good overall experience.
Right. You'd be kind of, you know, wishing maybe you didn't even buy the RV in the first place. You know, really think.
Yeah, you don't want regret because
regret.
of these kinds of decisions or things that you need to be thinking about. So basically, you know, really one thing leads into the other, and it really comes down to the purpose of what you're going to be doing and then your overall experience. And so back to service, let's talk about service like when you're full-time.
Well, that, you know, that's a good point. When you're full-time, you know, we bought our motorhome. We bought it from a dealer in like South Carolina. But if we're in Texas and something breaks, we have to be able to find service wherever we're at. You know, we can't just necessarily run it back to the dealer or even run it back to the manufacturer. So it's important to find a brand that has a very good network of dealerships available where you can take your RV and get service.
Or a manufacturer that has great service for you and your particular RV.
Right. You know, like for our brand, we own a Tiffin, but when we were in New York, we had a problem, and we called up the Tiffin. They gave us a dealership that was local. We went to them, and it was just like we had bought it from them because they really took care of us.
They treated us very well.
And that was, you know, that's very important, especially for full-timers, to think about this, because you're not always going to be, you know, a few miles from wherever you bought it.
And a lot of times, you know, depending on the service area or, you know, where you are, they don't always understand that you're living in it from that full-time perspective. You're living in your RV, and when they take it in for service, you got to plug it in because the fridge is full of food. They have to give it back to you so that you can stay, you know, you can spend the night in it. It's not so easy to just give it to them for days on end and have them repair it. And so having somebody that understands that is important.
Yeah, as a full-timer, we always look for a dealership that a lot of them offer a campground right at the dealership.
Yeah.
And we've taken advantage of this several times. Even recently, we've taken advantage of that. That's important because when you're living in it, you don't want to be displaced out of your home.
That is for sure. We don't want that. I don't like that feeling. It's interesting because, you know, you're full-time and everything you own is in it, and it's going off somewhere without you. And we really appreciate Tiffin and the fact that if we go to Red Bay, when our RV goes in the bay, we go with it. So we don't have to
never
get out.
Place, no.
Yeah. And so that's a huge perk for us. We really like that. Okay. So we're going to pause for a minute and tell you about our full-time RV framework. And then when we get back, we're going to share our last tip about buying the RV so that you can make some better decisions. So stay tuned.
This episode of the RV Living Show is brought to you by the Full-Time RV Framework.
This program includes a 4-module 26-lesson video course, a bi-weekly freedom call on Zoom, and group mentoring in a private community. Downsized RV living course, so you can learn to downsize with ease. The RV Your New Home Blueprints, so you can learn about your new home and how to use it. The Full-Time Transition Companion. This planner is where you plan your current life and transition tasks at the same time. Full-time RV maintenance and budgeting, and a Make Money on the Road resource guide. Everything in one place, so you can stop wondering and start wandering.
Learn more about enrolling in this complete solution for transitioning to the full-time RV life at fulltimervframework.com.
Okay, so tip number 3, Brian.
That's right. Talking about include some upgrades when you purchase. That's very important.
So we've learned that over the years. With each purchase that we made, It's hard that after you buy an RV, then you want to do things to it, right?
It is hard. We learned that from our first couple when we bought them. Then we have to take them back later and have something added to it. We want to add solar, whatever you want to add to it. Then that's just more trips back to the dealership, really,
and more cost out of your pocket.
More cost, because it always ends up costing more.
Yeah. So we learned that if we know what upgrades we want to have, we can include that in our purchase. So talk about some of the things we did when we bought this last RV.
Yeah, going into this one, right up front, we knew that a couple of things, especially for her, she wanted endless hot water.
Especially for me. Okay, blame me. Yes, I love long hot showers.
And that's okay. We knew going into it that we picked a particular hot water heater and we had it installed right before we even took delivery. We also had it solar added because we knew we wanted some solar panels added to the RV to extend our travels and boondocking time.
Yeah.
And another thing that I wanted in this one, since this was a gas motor home, I knew that I wanted some suspension upgrades so it handled much better. Knowing this going in, we were able to pick out exactly what we wanted, and the dealership took care of it for us. It was all done. When we drove off the lot, we didn't have to go back.
We didn't have to go back, and they included the labor of installing it was included in our purchase price. We still had to pay for the things that we wanted, like the solar panels and the Roadmaster suspension and the Truma AquaGo, but we didn't have to pay for any labor involved. They did that for us because it was included in our purchase.
Yeah. Fortunately, the labor on the parts that we put in was maybe not that much. Now, if you're adding something that's going to be a lot of labor, you may not be able to work that deal.
Yeah, it all depends on your negotiation at the table. But just know that this is a possibility. This is something that you can do when you buy your RV that could make a difference for you.
Yeah, especially if going in, you would want these upgrades. Now would be a time to really think about it. Because it's obvious you can buy an RV and maybe not realize the things you could actually do to it. It does require some research. It does require thinking through how I'm going to use the RV. But if you know this, it's a great time to actually do it.
Yeah, so those are our tips, right? We just want you to realize how you're going to use this RV. We want you to understand that it's not just about the floor plan. The floor plan's important, believe me. I was all about my floor plan. But we know from experience how important these other things about quality and service and the overall experience of living in your RV or traveling in your RV, it really impacts that.
Yeah, you're thinking about buying an RV. I can kind of give you a brief idea what we went through in buying this RV. We knew going in that we was going to buy a certain brand because of the quality or the service level of service going in. So we didn't have to think about which brand to buy or which RV or which type. All we had to think about is which model we wanted to buy from them.
Right. And if you're coming into it and you have no idea, that's kind of why we wanted to share with you all these tips, is because you don't know what you don't know. And maybe you can shortcut your RV buying experience by having some of these tips and different perspectives that you can look at. They always say that it takes about 3 times to get the actual RV that you would love to have and live with for a long time. But there are some of us who cannot afford to make those bigger mistakes. I mean, RVs depreciate, rolling one into another financing, if that's what you're doing and you're not paying cash, it can add up over time. And so if you can eliminate some of those regrets or mistakes or not well thought out plans by having these tools in your pocket, then I think you'll be really successful.
You will be successful for sure.
Okay, so we're going to jump in the comments here in a second, but we also wanted to tell you that next week we're going to be talking about the one thing you have to stop saying if you want to full-time. If you want to know what that is, be sure to join us next week. Same time, same place, right here on the RV Living Show. Okay, so let's go to our comments. So Kelly says, hi, Kelly and Dave from Ohio. We currently have a bumper pull travel trailer looking for a Class A to travel the USA, or a Class C. Yeah, Kelly and Dave, that's you're probably if you're going to be extended travel, you're probably going to be really happy with that. Towables are harder to take around. There's more stress in driving them, or towing them, I should say.
Yeah, well, we know a lot of people that own towables and are quite happy with them. But if you're looking for a Class A or Class C for travel, those are actually perfect.
Yeah, you'll probably be really happy with that. So Wayne says, timely topic for us. We've started looking for a newer RV. Service is important, our top want. Yeah, it's really important to know that, because you know what? All RVs are going to need service. I don't care what manufacturer you buy from, you're going to have stuff fixed.
Yeah, even if you buy a brand new RV, guess what? They're going to break. Matter of fact, we picked up a new RV. We know that from the very beginning, there were several things that was wrong. It wasn't. Well,
it's the punch list out of the manufacturer. So you on top of repairs, you've got a punch list, like a new home.
Like a new home.
Yeah.
But there's things going to be wrong. And even down the road, you'll find there'll be problems. No, we haven't found a perfect RV, wish there was one, but obviously pick one that's going to have, where you can get service is a good place to start.
Okay, Lola says that she made the right choice because she did tons of research before she bought. Yes, that's super important. Don't buy the first one that you see. It's really an important thing to weigh them out. But then also you have to not get so overwhelmed in the choices, because there's tons of choices out there.
There is too many choices, really.
Yeah, I mean, if you could get a choice of 5, you could narrow it down, and then you could make an easier decision. But when you've got hundreds to choose from, and overall the model years and different manufacturers, I mean, there's a lot, and it can be very overwhelming. But again, going back to your purpose, what are you going to do? How are you going to use it? Are you going to be traveling a lot? Are you going to be full-time? Are you going to be destination camping? Those things are all really important for you to really determine before you start shopping.
That's right.
Well, thanks for joining us this week. We are super excited that you did. And if you're going to be watching this on the replay, we can still respond to comments and questions in the comments box. So let us know what you're thinking, and we will see you next week.
See you there.
Thank you for joining us for the RV Living Show. We hope this episode helps you in creating an RV life you love.
Until next time, we encourage you to stop wandering